Hello and welcome to the Watson Weekend. Yes, we're back again. My name is Rick Watson. This is your weekly dose of e-commerce entertainment.
Yes, it's Jessica Liseski, and we are still on our journey to find the true meaning of journalism in this crazy little podcast that we have.
Exactly. Journalists, we are not. But this is for you, your weekly dose of medicine with just enough sugar to make it go down okay. And hopefully your place to go for retail, tech, e-commerce, all the things.
Yeah, and a little bit of fun and flair, right? We like to mix it up.
Yeah, more fun than information, we think.
Yeah. Hey, if there's like one thing you can take away, we've done what we set out to do, right?
Yeah, and then about once every 10 shows, we will do that.
Yeah. All right. So we wanted to also give a thanks and a shout out to VTEX. They are helping make the show happen this week, bringing it to you. They are great partners. We love VTEX and Magic Johnson, apparently, according to Vinny, our producer here. Not in that order necessarily, but really appreciate Andrew Mariano and the team. They're always out there kind of bringing new ideas in this whole commerce landscape, especially in B2B. So
yeah, definitely complex e-commerce technology needs. Give them a shout.
Yes, absolutely. So we're doing a different thing this week, Rick. You want to break it down?
Yeah, it's crazy. This is going to be a little bit of a unique version of the Watson Weekend. We're going to go through the headline hangover as we normally do. And we're going to bring in Nick and Vinny here, who everyone knows and loves. But we're also going to bring in the audience. Obviously, we're broadcasting live here on YouTube only. And we have collected a number of questions from the audience. And of course, we know there's so many regular listeners, tens and tens of listeners that we collect here on the Watson Weekend. So Victor, Garish, Glick, Murray, Linda, Edward, the whole
Kathy,
gang.
Yeah,
this is why I can name all of them on the top of my head. That's our reach.
Miles, Edward,
Miles,
you forgot. Yeah.
Though I think Miles is on holiday today.
Oh, okay. All right. So we might have a few less questions than normal.
All right.
Well, we're going to kick it first with an interesting move in the Shein evolution. They're going after your money in a new way, right, Rick?
Yeah, Shein is launching first global credit card, we think, because if you read the story, they're partnering with a Mexican fintech provider, Story. So is it a global credit card or is it only for Mexico? I got very confused reading the story. It'll be interesting to see, do people want a Shein credit card? Like if you're going to be out to dinner, Jess, are you pulling out that Shein credit card?
Hundo P. No, I'm not pulling out that credit card. I don't even know if it would be good. What kind of points are you earning? I mean, is this something to get the kiddos who are shopping on Shein to get some extra points so they can get more shirts with minimal lead? I'm not really clear on the benefit here, but yeah, the story was confusing. It felt like it was targeted to more Latin America. Which we were talking about before, like Mercado Libre really has a foothold there. So it's just kind of interesting move. And I'm not really sure how to process or think about it.
Yeah. I mean, Shein does have a foothold in Latin America in a lot of the markets in Brazil and other countries. They're building and continue to build a huge network of suppliers so that China isn't their only source of supply. And so that's been growing. I think the loyalty program, that's a good question. I think you get extra lead if you use if you become a platinum member.
Oh, because there really will be platinum in your body, maybe.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, in other marketplace-esque type news, we have Poshmark that is walking back some new seller fees that they introduced. And it was just after a few weeks of implementing them. So kind of the quick synopsis here is they launched some seller fees. They launched some changes. They had a lot of backlash, as typically does when you raise your fees on sellers. And they walked them back very quickly, which also meant they walked back Posh Pash, which was a pilot program that was available to a certain group of their like very high, most engaged sellers,
Mm,
which had discounted shipping and things like that. So one was supposed to offset the other, and now it feels like new strategy over here,
mm.
abandoned strategy like a few weeks later. So I was curious, Rick, do you think they pulled the plug too soon?
Um, Look, I have a feeling that these fees had a big effect on conversion. One of the biggest things that Poshmark and other marketplaces have been trying is how to switch some of their fees from seller fees to buyer fees. And I think raising seller fees and raising buyer fees are not appreciated by many communities, especially if you're not the dominant community. Amazon can get away with it.
They can, and they just like shove it under a rug somewhere, and like all these other hidden bills that you have.
Yeah.
They also removed this buyer protection fee.
Mm,
So it's kind of interesting that, especially in these economic times, they're introducing lots of these fee changes, which typically, to your point, they don't bolster
mm.
conversion. They typically give you an AOV boost, but it looks like it probably wasn't enough to offset the decline in volume.
Yeah, no, so, I mean, speaking of in these economic times, our next story is coming from our friends at the NRF. NRF says we're sitting pretty for peak, nothing to worry about here. It's always sunny at the NRF, as we like to say here on the Watson Weekend. Um, Consumers are happy in spending. There's lots of inventory, but we're actually at quote optimal inventory, which is ever anything optimal? I'll just leave that question, let it
No.
lie there. What's the retail performance that they love? Most people are shuttering stores. Some retailers are getting, you might call it last ditch investments from retailers that are themselves going out of business. Hello, Beyond investing in Container Store, and Kirkland's, not that Kirkland's, the other Kirkland's you used to remember.
Oh yeah, not the Kirkland that you might get at
Not
Costco,
the
right?
cool Kirkland's.
The one that was like kind of a offshoot of it's made like a broke down Pier 1.
It's your
So
grandmother's tchotchkes.
yeah,
Let's just call it what it is.
yes. Yes, check mark on that. Yeah.
So,
I thought the other interesting thing that they were referencing was that this the strike and other things happening in the Red Sea didn't seem to have impacted retailers merchandising at all, which it was just such a blip. Like,
mhm.
would people have really thought that? I mean, Jason Murray, we already tackled that, and
Yes, we
we
covered it
already had
here.
solved that problem. So I think it to your point, optimal inventory feels very ambitious and a little bit sunshine, rainbows, and unicorns, which does seem like the narrative that happens to come out.
Exactly. It comes out a lot. So yeah, that's the next part of the story. Our next story is from Best Buy talking about customer loyalty. Why don't you take us through that?
Yeah. So I don't know if you heard this, Rick, but customers just aren't as loyal as they used to be. I'll wait for the pause and the shock and all to come through. But yeah, so it sounds like in their one of their earnings calls over the summer, there was this comment that was buried in the Q&A section where they talked about customer loyalty and their brand loyalty being the lowest it's really ever been historically. And Amarsis in this article that was in Retail Brew, Amarsis was kind of showing the differences where in like
Hmm,
2022, 79% of US consumers said that they were loyal to a specific brand.
hmm,
But that number has dropped to 14% in 2023 and 13% in 2024. So a
hmm.
pretty steep decline. And the consensus is we've got this more empowered consumer. The reality is it's a price game, baby doll, and
Baby doll.
everybody is just going after where they can get the cheapest item, right? I mean,
Yeah.
isn't that really the name of the game here?
It seems to be the cheapest item. I mean, there's been a lot of chatter about Amazon's low price shop this week, and I was
Hmm.
posting about it, and I've seen some news about it. Look, if Amazon has more PhD economists in the Federal Reserve. And if they think that price is number one right now, then they're probably correct about the mass market consumer. Like, who are we to disagree with that? But on the other hand, 75% of all self-reported surveys are complete bullshit. So I'm questioning sort of the, what a consumer says they're going to do is very different than what they actually do.
That's very true. And look, there's been so much investment put in loyalty, but really driven through things like, in Best Buy's case, the Best Buy credit card. They have the rewards program. I think the reality is that it narrows, and it always kind of sticks with this core set of consumers. And if you aren't bringing more and more into that funnel, by nature, your loyalty is just going to decline, or those most loyal customers are going to decline because you just don't have enough coming into those programs. And I don't know what the benefit is for customers anymore at this stage. So,
yeah, Linda, she said she's waiting with a glass in hand for every team where she mentioned, like, she's going to be drunk by 10 minutes into the show. So it's a challenge. Thank you, Linda, as always, for your support of the show. Our next topic, we're going to talk a little bit about UPS, who released earnings in the last 2 days. They had a good performance, and so their volume declines have kind of bottomed out, and they have, I would say, margin tailwinds that were definitely reported in their earnings call for a couple of reasons. Number one is they're shrinking. Literally, the number of people are shrinking, and the number of network nodes in their systems are shrinking, and they're making the existing nodes more efficient. So, like, all their automated hubs are now able to handle 5% more volume, which allows them to close a whole bunch of extra facilities. So anytime you can get larger fixed assets that are more automated and drive more density through them, you're going to be more profitable. The other story that they're telling is, in Q2, they had 12% wage inflation because they were still on the old contract on an annualized basis. So like Q2 of last year was before the union contract was signed. Now Q3, they have a full, I think Q4 will be the first full quarter, but I think most of Q3 annualized that contract. So that wage inflation last quarter in Q3 of 2024 was only 5%, which is pretty good for any kind of company that's so heavily dependent on labor. And it's almost like you go to the NFL, you look at every contract, and it's like, I can't believe that. I'm just going to go back in history. Like, Donovan McNabb makes so much money for like not winning many playoff games. Like, how can you pay him $50 million or whatever it is? Sorry, Philly fans. But
no, it would be Dak Prescott now. So
yeah, exactly. Oh, that does that hit close to home to you? Just for viewers, just to let it, the inside joke. If we had the photo, we would show it here. Jess's photo, family photo, that is, at the mecca of U.S. pro sports, the holy grail of U.S. pro sports. Of course, we're talking about Dallas Stadium, the home of Jerry Jones.
Yes, yes. Everyone has to kiss the ring before.
Which, by the way, RMW Commerce branding is on point to that logo.
Yeah, we're very on point today.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying, I think you're feeling the Cowboys blues. But yeah, so going back, I think it is impressive that they've been able to manage margin the way that they have. There was so much chatter when this team's, when the deals rolled out and they were renegotiating these contracts of what effect that would have on their margins. And it feels like they've been managing that in a responsible way. I'm curious how you compare that to like FedEx, because you haven't beat up on FedEx in a while.
Yeah, I haven't. Sometimes there's companies I don't follow as much all the time because it's like the last 3 times I looked, it was bad, and so like, do I want to look again? I feel bad a little bit. So I don't have a FedEx comparison off the top of my head, but as Garish said, I don't want to abandon my audience here, but I think another interesting point that came out of the UPS earnings was they had about 8% U.S. parcel volume increase in Q3. Most of that through 2 shippers. Anyone get any guess of which 2 shippers that came from? Linda is going to drink.
Shein, Temu.
Yes, Shein and Temu. Welcome, Edward. It's okay to be fashionably late. You didn't miss anything. We're actually not that interesting.
We've just run through all the latest headlines, so you can catch the recap.
Yeah, you can catch the recap. But yeah, Temu and Shein covered like essentially over half of their volume growth from what my estimation of decoding the corporate jargon speak of the earnings call, where they try to tell you what's going on, but not fully tell you what's going on. It's interesting. What does that mean for the rest of us if Temu and Shein are capturing all the growth? And is that the secret reason why behind Amazon's changes?
For sure. It has to be, right? Because we've talked about this all year. Even last year, that train was coming with the Shein and Temu $5 items. Really not a train. It's an airplane that, rides on the tailwinds of the de minimis
Right.
goods. So yeah, I think that it's for sure driven through that volume. They're really, if you look at retail, the only one that's posting those types of significant growth numbers.
Yeah.
Amazon's feeling the heat. We'll see how their new price pointed store, which I thought was actually the whole Amazon site overall, will change that narrative.
Yeah, Linda mentioned about disappointed kids this Christmas due to shipping cutoff times. I got my Temu Lederhosen in 5 days, so that was pretty cool.
Yeah. No, I remember being at eBay.
5-ish.
Yeah, I do remember this was a big deal at eBay when I was there. This has been over 10 years ago, but we had a number of Chinese sellers flooding the marketplace, and we couldn't get search fixed fast enough. And so by mid-November, you're starting to see things drop off because of those shipping cutoffs. But it feels like they've optimized their delivery windows. They're getting it tighter. It's way more competitive than it used to be.
Yeah, look, I think like the movie Office Space, Amazon quote unquote fixed the glitch. And the glitch was that American sellers showed up in the search at all. So now it's only Chinese sellers. They fixed the glitch. So
yeah, there we go. All right. Well, I guess we're going to now kick this off and do it Bill O'Reilly style. We're going live.
exactly. Let's bring on our intrepid producer, Vinny O'Brien, and our resident curmudgeon, Nick Kaplan. And
hello. You did not get the memo, Vinny, on the blues. We were supposed to match.
No baby blues today.
Yeah, I sent the email. I don't know. But I want to say congratulations. You've spoken for 18 minutes without bringing us in. That's a new guest record. Nick, you fell asleep there for a few minutes. I'm glad I got a text into you to wake up. You're getting too comfortable in your Crocs. Crocs 2.0 should be your little...
They're auras.
Come on.
Focus.
When's a Croc not a Croc? When Nick Kaplan wears it.
That's right.
Great opening. And by the way, Jess, you've gone rogue. Hundo P, Pish Posh. There was something else in there as well, but dropping lingo bombs everywhere.
I'm just trying to see what sticks, give the people what they want. A few little isms and we'll see what sticks around. I got to compete with Nick over here, who's very articulate in his analogies.
I just have one question. Will the free gift with purchase that Shein will offer for a credit card sign up be a scorpion included in their package?
I like the throwback.
Too soon, Nick.
Too soon, for sure.
So
that was last week's show for those checking the archives.
So what we're trying to do today is a little bit different, as we said, and I want to put the guys on the spot a little bit because they always have answers for everything. Like every email is responded in seconds and Slack, and even when you get to talk to them, it gets even more pronounced. So I thought today would be a great idea to get you guys to ask some questions. So I don't want to talk too much. I want to hear from you, Ed. I want to hear from you, Greesh, Linda, anyone else who's in the audience listening. But I want to pass the first question come over to Nick, because you've had a few views on these things and you posted something in the private chat that no one would have seen, and you said something versus something. I'm going to dub that 2025 is going to be the people versus retail. It's a Netflix special. Who's sitting on both sides of the coin and what are they thinking?
In the people versus retail?
Yeah.
Is this a court case?
David Schwimmer played Nick, a young Nick, I might add. But Go on.
I mean, I think that this probably harkens back to something I may have written, said that the consumer is winning, maybe. I think that to sort of extend from last week's incredibly joyous experience with Jess and Eric, I am a very sort of bear market-esque economy viewer at the moment. I don't see the health and the consumer, and as a result, I think the people versus retail is a very, very patient consumer and a very, very challenged retailer. And the marriage is not good for the retailer in what is this age of efficiency that RMW Commerce has written and supported the thesis, and we're here in this world of GEMROI and cash and other metrics that go away from EBITDA and gross profit and talk to things like organizational unity around inventory management or customer growth. It's harder and harder to operate as people evolve. And so in the people versus retail, I'm on the side of the people. I think that it's ball in your court retail to come up with new and interesting ways to build community and engage consumers. And it should be a very interesting year for us. And I'd be curious to hear what others feel about that.
Same question, Jess.
For sure, the consumer is winning. I know Linda posts about the holiday deals, and sorry, Sahukar is posts about holiday deals. I think people are, whether you believe NRF or not, are still going to have inventory that they need to shore up. We're already seeing brands that did not discount putting things at 50% off. They're having flash sales even before you get to a Black Friday. And I think that we're going to see more and more the consumer take command of what's happening in the marketplace, and brands like Shein and Temu and Amazon continuing to win. So I do think that it's a different environment. We've heard about the loyalty, what we talked about earlier. It's not there. And some things are really going to have to change that I don't see to see something kind of take control back in the hands of a retailer.
No, I think it's fascinating battle between the people in retail. I think Lena Khan is the judge right now, and she might be the judge, jury, and executioner. She is blocking, not she, but judges who I'm sure are using Lena Khan under cover of darkness are blocking Tapestry, which is the owner of Coach, their acquisition of Capri, which is the owner of Michael Kors. To say that retailers can't combine if they want to combine, why is this happening in the market right now? Why can't there be acquisitions? What does this mean for Marty Armstrong, who can't unlock synergies anymore? Hat tip to Marty. I'm not sure.
In the meantime, I've got a text from Ted Sarandos, Nick. He said he didn't like your pitch. You need something a bit punchier, if that's okay. But taking the cue from everything that you've said, like Garisha said in our chat here, that there's no disposable income right now, but that doesn't matter because we got credit cards where you can rack up loads of debt, and buy now, pay later is this unlimited fountain of unforgettable money. How is BNPL penetrated so much without anyone questioning it?
I think you have a younger generation that has taken to it when they were initially sort of very skeptical of credit cards, and it's kind of become a crutch for a lot of those items. And I think, look, the chickens are going to come home to roost at some point over it. But ultimately, it's only a matter of time before every BNPL provider looks like exactly what the credit card industry does today, because the regulations, consumer transparency, the rights aspect that, BNPL maybe is more friendly in some sense because it's sort of a purchase by purchase basis than sort of a revolving debt instrument a little bit. But Congress is going to get their meat hooks into it too at some point.
I mean, if you think about debt, we've talked about this a lot. I mean, debt is a 4-letter word, but it's a good word for businesses, right? Nothing is straight. Cash flows require sort of management, credit lines. And so the notion of debt for any business is that they borrow what they can, they negotiate terms and pay it back responsibly. That is not what the US consumer has done. And I think that why I'm sort of bearish on, fourth quarter, holiday, and retail in 2025 is what the consumer and the general population I don't think has an appreciation of is the predatory nature of private label credit cards in the credit business. And we continue to extend credit to non-credit worthy people. And I think that buy now, pay later is unregulated. I think if you look at what JP Morgan Chase no longer will allow you to connect their credit cards to buy now, pay later providers. I think that was a very big shot. And I think Klarna is no longer, in my opinion, a buy now, pay later provider as much as it's an affiliate. If you look at where Klarna's money comes from, and as they head towards their IPO, which continues to sort of be fringy and not happening, but there. I talk to clients and people we work with as a driver of traffic, as an affiliate, not as necessarily a converter, whereas when it first came out, it was that. So
yeah,
I think that these total credit vehicles, whether it's buy now, pay later, private label credit cards are going to have their reckoning down the road when there's regulatory changes, as well as a need for people to rein in some of the debt, and the consumer is going to be like, wait a minute, I can't pay you.
No, exactly.
I think there's just been bigger fish to fry. It's coming. I just don't think of all the regulations and the things that have been on the punch list of what needs to be regulated. It just keeps falling by the wayside because there's bigger things to focus on. But it's coming.
Google search, right? Like we have to make sure that Google and the search is monopolized, but credit's totally fine.
Correct. Or the de minimis thing. I think, there's probably a good high-fiving done, because it feels like they're putting the squeeze on that and they're tackling that. Rick's already talked about Lena's making sure, no other companies are harmed in the making of these mergers and acquisitions. So, and no consumers are harmed. So, I mean, I think that it's a blind eye right now.
Welcome to Europe.
Just to add that 1 second, I mean, the whole Spirit, right? The whole Spirit merger, I mean, Spirit's not going to make it, right? So they've decided it's like, oh, you know what? Like Spirit, it was Spirit Frontier, right? I believe it was Spirit Frontier.
Yeah.
It's like, well, not good together, but we're just going to make this one go away. Stronger
together, isn't it? But you cited Chase there, but Chase, I have to chuckle. They were the first bank to open a retail media network. That's a subject for like 7 minutes time. I'm going to get into that in just a moment. But There's something you've said there and something Eric said last week, which I think is a generational thing we need to grasp, which is how the next generation of consumer, Gen Z and everything below, is starting to think about the world. He said that they're not thinking long term. So as marketers, and Nick, our first get together, you were less curmudgeonly, but you were very, very on point in January when you said that if you need to be an e-com trader right now, you got to think week to week, not month to month. Is that a sign of how we need to think about brand development and trading as we go look into 2025?
I mean, is that for me, the curmudgeon? I get
you know what? I'm going to let you mull on that one.
I mean, it's terrible.
No, I'm going to let you mull on that one for a minute. Jess, you've been trading pretty aggressively for the last number of years, and you've been at the cold face of this. So I'd love to hear how you think about it and the evolution that you've seen and the way that consumers think about the world, because I think it's drastically different.
Yeah, for sure. It is drastically different. The other piece that I think is becoming more challenging is what's unique, because everything is now become so commoditized as more and more brands are built on Shopify. We're not building out these like really differentiating experiences anymore. Stores some people can take them, some people can leave them. And so really what you're seeing is now with Amazon, with Shein, with Temu, everything has become a price-driven conversation with consumers that is ultimately what's getting them to transact. Yes, people are like, oh, but what about the environment? What about people caring about where their products come from? They're voting with their wallets. They don't care. It's clear. So I think that the genie is out of the bottle. It will be very difficult to put it back in. And the companies that will sustain do have quality products that a very core brand that they can stand behind. So I just think that we're going to see more and more consolidation. And the other aspect that we haven't talked about yet is TikTok and the power of social commerce and where transactions are happening and where they will continue to happen. Social influence is going to completely change, and but will completely change the game of what will drive people to buy. And I think we're not going to see people as worried about like Lululemon, or as long as they can get something that looks just like it, can get here in 2 or 3 days and cost $10.
I think that's an interesting point, and I think a lot of e-commerce operators still haven't gotten their heads around the fact that the successful brands, are becoming media companies, or they're trading on someone else's media brands. And so the companies that grew up 10, 15 years ago, they were like, oh, I need to be in Google, I need to optimize my site for SEO. That's dead, folks. And if you're not thinking of yourself as a media personality to communicate that trust and authority of your product line consistently over your time across not only your own media, meaning like your website, your app, but also your own social and earned media, which again, we could probably have a whole discussion about earned media. Frankly, earned media is the future of e-commerce, because what you say about yourself is one thing, but what others say about you, that's your brand.
Correct.
And if you have a scorpion in your box, that's a shitty brand.
Are we sure? I mean, that's the surprise and delight.
I mean, that may have been one of the most brilliant marketing campaigns of all time.
It could have been, right?
I mean, I could have honestly seen them doing it on purpose.
Well, it's like when women found the notes sewed in to their Zara clothing from like supposedly the women in Turkey, who were making the clothing. That was like, help me. So I mean, but it didn't slow Zara down. I mean, they're still kicking it. You're exactly right, Rick. And I just do think we're in this era that retailers haven't been able to fully adapt to, especially the legacy ones. Like I just saw a post that Macy's, added like something like 220,000 SKUs to their marketplace. Who cares? Like marketplaces at this point were like 10 years ago. That's not going to save the brand, and that's not going to get people to shop. So what else is Macy's doing to be relevant? It's unclear.
They're giving up all their real estate because it's more valuable than the items that are in their stores. That's what they're doing.
Yeah, this sounds like a Sears 3.0 situation.
This is the greatest podcast no one's ever going to hear. But in thinking about what that means for us going into 2025, it shapes how we need technology within our organizations. It shapes the type of people we need in there. It shapes the budget we're going to put together. How do we start making sense of it? Because, you're going to hear all the back to basics. Let's get back to basics come January, and the same old story. But Nick, come on, I see you shaking your head.
I mean, listen, I love math. And it's a pretty simple equation, right? It's like media plus data equals commerce. And you got to have soul. And I remember, I've talked about my favorite job ever before as the women's coat department manager at Saks long ago. But I was there for the first Double Points event. Like, it was crazy. And guess what? It was record breaking. And guess what? What happened a year later? It's like, how you anniversary that? You don't.
Yeah, same thing.
right? Oh, so it becomes a triple points event.
Triple
Exactly. So we are there. Like, the most valuable commodity that we have is now time. And in the age of efficiency, the department store, mall, payments, and everything else that sits in our pocket has made us as beings efficient. So whether it's like pricing search by image or content consumption in downtime, I mean, like, it's incredible the amount of time we spend connected. And so it's changed not just how we live, but how we shop and how we eat and everything that we do. And so I just struggle with a Macy's who may not die in my lifetime, but will die. And how it evolves. And I think that we don't want to deal with these realities. We don't want to look ahead. We don't want to take the pain. We want to punt. And companies that think ahead and transform or evolve at the top of their game versus on the backside of the bell curve are the ones that survive.
Mm-hmm.
So you're saying I'm going to be next year going to the Shein Thanksgiving Day parade?
The thing about Shein is, yeah, I mean, I feel
Amazon,
like
it'll be the Amazon.
Shein's not a retail company. And that's the thing people don't understand. Shein is a technology company. In period. It is a connector of supply and demand in the most efficient way possible, and it's taking a vig on every transaction. And so I don't know why people think about competing. I'd love to be a fly on the wall in some of those lobby meetings about de minimis in Washington, like how that hasn't been overturned yet. Another thing people don't think about. They don't think about logistics. They don't think about supply chain. They don't think about the decisions in Washington that get made under the covers.
Well, no, they do, because you've got our friends and advocates at NRF worrying about organized retail crime. And that's what they're lobbying for.
No report, Jess. Not a story. No report.
Yeah.
No theft this year.
Here, I said it. So that's what your retail organization is focused on and has been focused on for years, versus probably tackling some of the things that could actually add value to the community. I'm not saying organized retail crime doesn't exist. Is it the number one hotspot? I would say no. Can we talk about Ulta? Because the story came out this week that they, were opening up 200 stores. We've talked about beauty being one of these categories that doesn't seem to have slower growth. Like it feels like there's so much runway. And you have like Selena Gomez's brand, Rare Beauty. I think that hit $1 billion in valuation. You have Fenty. You have all of these other kinds of celebrity-based beauty brands, but it feels like there seems to be more room in beauty for competition, whether it's single brands or a retailer like Ulta. Like, what do you guys think about that category, and why does it have more staying power?
Well,
it's interesting. So I would say my answer might be different than other people. I think it's kind of accessible luxury. Number one, it allows you to identify with an influencer or brand that you really feel a part of. And beauty, as they say, is in the eye of the beholder. So if you identify with a certain personality or superstar, whether it's Rihanna or Olivia Rodriguez or like whoever that you're focused on, you don't have to buy a $3,000 handbag to be a part of the movement. You can buy a $10 mascara or something. And so I think
it's at least $30.
Yeah, it's at least $30 unless it's on Temu.
Then your eyes are swollen and red.
I think beauty is the perfect business on some level, right? I mean, incredible margins.
Right.
It's a consumable. Doesn't take super long to make it. Like, you're not taking these crazy raw materials like textiles where they're big and it's hard to move from one place to another. We deal with some beauty clients, right? So production is here, United States. It's not super expensive. It's assembly. It's basically like pour it in, mix it up, send it out. And to Rick's point, it's about creating, it's like FOMO, right? It's like perfect. Oh yeah, and by the way, as sort of a father and a husband, like my kids are so obsessed with Sephora based on, you know, everything that's happened in these brands' ability to create content and distribute it. And they're just master marketers. I mean, people that aren't looking at the beauty industry all over to understand about like community building and, you know, sort of thriving. And then I think the other thing is there's only a couple players, right? I mean, like if you want to be in the beauty business, you go to Sephora. And if not Sephora, then you go to Ulta. And then you go to, oh yeah, nobody else. Right? So you can have a partner like Saks or Neiman's or Nordstrom, and I think that there's some goodness there. But like it's a binary.
Walmu was my other name.
Tarmu.
I was going to say hyaluronic acid. But there's something from the branding from within as well in beauty I think is amazing. And then as a consumer, it's the immediacy of the result. You see impact so quickly relative to other products. Like Nick, your Hokas aren't going to fix that fallen arch you have now for another few weeks, which is unfortunate for you, but it's the difference kind of between footwear and the beauty industry.
There's also a huge affinity between beauty and this phone in our pockets, because what are we taking pictures of ourselves? I bet if Google did an analysis of all the pictures on the internet that have ever been taken, 90% of them are of what? People's faces. And that has everything to do with beauty. And so I think the affinity between social media, communication, social commerce, and beauty is ridiculous. And if you look at like how are people spending their time, they're spending time on their phones and they're looking at their faces. And so all these things kind of reinforce each other.
And I'll add one more. When the world went virtual and women had to stare at themselves all day on a Teams screen or a Zoom screen, I know I like was immediately like shoot it up because my face is sagging and I've got to fix this problem. Yeah. Yeah.
I never thought about that. I mean, listen, we want to live forever. There's a whole industry that is getting more and more traction in the media about like aging, right?
I think that's a different podcast, the All In podcast, Nick.
Sure, but like I'm just saying, beauty is like we want to look great, we want to live forever. We don't want to eat properly or make good life choices, but we want to live forever and look good.
Ozempic.
Yeah, it's the easy button.
This is the most animated I've ever seen Nick Kaplan. But a couple of points to pick up. A couple of points to pick up on. There is a guy called Kevin Kelly, who's a technology anthropologist who was one of the guys who designed the technology for Minority Report. Who's going to guess what year Minority Report was released in?
Was it like?
Let's go around the horn. Nick?
91.
Jess?
2001.
Rick?
96.
Jess for the win. Spot on, 2001. Kevin Kelly designed the technology over 4 years, including stuff like a connected fridge, which would not just tell your grocery store that you need more milk, but it would realize, Nick, by the way, now you're lactose intolerant, so we're going to ask them to send you soya milk. Now, I want to read out 2 quotes from his book, The Inevitable, because he's kind of framed up what's going on around the world. This book was written in 2016. This point you said a few minutes ago, Nick, since it is the last scarcity, wherever attention flows, money will follow. The second thing he wrote there, which I thought was really telling, and I only realized it recently, he said, in fact, the business plans of the next 10,000 startups are easy to forecast. Take X and add AI. Find something that can be made better by adding online smartness to it. His book is a fabulous blueprint for understanding what's happening around us. And I think it's one of the things that this group does really, really well. So looking ahead then, we're kind of getting on time. I'd normally be ragging on you guys in the background to say, you've done 44 minutes, cut it off. But I want to have a look at next year. We've been to conferences. There was no one at Shop Talk Fall, but that's okay. They'll go again next year. What are we looking at for 2025, and what should we expect from good conferences? What do we need to see?
I think community is the simple answer. Is people expect connections. People expect friendships and relationship development that leads to business. That's really why all these things exist. The age of the conference as a place to learn information from the speakers, I think, is over and has been over for so many years. If the company is big enough that they're a draw for the event, the number of things that they will let their lawyer say and pass through the legal and PR filters is literally zero. Like, they can talk about what was in a press release last week because that had been vetted by the legal team 2 weeks ago. And by the way, it had to go through their earnings call or whatever it was. But you're learning. There's two ways to learn: what people say and what people do. And when you talk to people face to face in real life over drinks or on the show floor, you get to see behind the bright lights and big signs and the big booths to understand what businesses are thriving, which ones are paper tigered. I still remember 2 years ago, with respect to Tom Armstrong, who was there, pour some liquor out for Fast. They had and Fabric at the time, like the biggest freaking booths at Shop Talk. I mean, it was like a 80 by 80. It was ridiculous. And the company literally went out of business 2 weeks after. I mean, it was sick.
Last hurrah.
And 80 by 80 is 120 by 120 for us in Europe. Carry on, Nick. What do you think?
Just to add to that, as you know, always, I do agree with Rick. I don't think that there's anything other than, there's nothing like being in person. And so I'd say look ahead at the calendar. There's been some movement in some of the conferences. Some of the ones that kind of happen on the e-commerce front, like the Lead moved earlier. Shop Talk, I think get your ticket, right? Just announced this week you can get your ticket to spring. I think that'll be a good one. And heard that there's a good attendance at Shop Talk Fall. I mean, I think it just pick a few conferences, get out there and go and build some community and learn from people and talk about what's happening. I do think that oftentimes there are these themes, although in 2024 we didn't really see that. So hopefully 2025, one of the themes I think we'll see coming out of conferences is this notion of like commerce everywhere. I think that commerce continues to sort of permeate further into our lives off-site. And Facebook is doing some interesting things with Facebook having a cart and social commerce.
Did you say cart or cart?
Cart.
Thank you.
So I think yes, I would look for revenue creation and kind of commerce everywhere, and the accessibility. And then I'd be kind of curious to see too, and think we'll see more proliferation on the AI front with creative, meaning will it evolve to give us more asset creation? I think those are two big themes we'll see, which is media development with artificial intelligence and commerce everywhere, which will allow smaller businesses to continue to fight and power with their brand integrity to the big guys. So,
Jess, final word on this topic to you.
I feel like people will probably invest more in spending time in some of the, like, you're going to have to go to some of the big conferences, but finding more of the smaller niche events, like Rick, you do it to Shoptoberfest this year. I think some of those where we talked about the community engagement being really important and finding not only people that you can connect with, but have real meaningful conversations with. And I think it's also going to be places where strategic partnerships get formed, because that's the only thing we haven't hit on in our circle or merry-go-round of what's happening in the commerce industry is strategic partnerships are the only other unlock for growth, and where you see these brand integrations or different businesses coming together to do some back scratching to hopefully drive new audiences. And I feel like that'll be the continuation where our friend Lena is not going to allow the actual mergers. We talked about it with Allie. You're going to see that work around with partnerships, and those are going to play out, and those are going to happen. I think behind some closed doors, small dinners where people start to strike up those conversations.
Speaking of Oktoberfest, can we get the pictures of Rick and Leader, please?
Yeah, I'll circulate them next week.
That's coming on it for a mug near you.
I was going to say,
Yes,
Nick,
please.
it's Halloween week, and you just heard the scariest word of all time was small dinners. Not something you ever want to hear. The final thing I want to say is, as we move into 2025 and we can kind of get to wrapping up now and thinking about what we're going to be doing for the weekend. But the thing I wanted to get to, it's been bubbling under all year. We've talked about it a lot. Rick, privacy laws are changing dramatically in the US. We've lived with it for a long time in Europe. Is it going to be the single biggest force that changes the rules of engagement in commerce beyond 2025?
It's hard not to believe that it has to be one of the top couple of forces for sure, if not the biggest, especially if you're a large brand that could be penalized by running afoul of any of these privacy rules. I think in Europe, especially on site, you kind of know what you're getting, which is essentially nothing. In the US, it's a little bit of a dog's breakfast of laws, which is one of my favorite phrases. Now there are 20 different states that have different consumer privacy protection laws and multiplying. So those laws themselves will keep changing. So how, as a retailer, do you keep up with that? I think security and privacy will become, if not a VC investable space in e-commerce, and increasingly right now, it just seems like we have so many logistics tech companies and fintech companies and not many sort of like customer privacy data related companies. I do think there could be a lot more investment there.
Amazing. Guys, we've taken up enough of each other's time. I think we're getting close to wrapping up. Want to say thanks for the little experiment. It's been a huge amount of fun. Great to listen to you as always. Any last words from anyone, Jess?
I think it's been a fun ride so far. We talked about we're almost nearing our 50th episode. Really appreciate everyone that's been listening in and help spread the word. And if we're not talking about something that you want us to hit on, let us know.
Sure, Nick.
I mean, I'm just happy to be here. So that I get the curmudgeon and all, but I think, for all the operators out there, watch your inventory. For all the people supporting operators, think ahead. Those are my words of advice. Inventory kills, and evolve when you don't have to. And I'm grateful to be part of this group.
Last word to Richard M. Watson. Bring it home.
Yes. I think the interesting part of this year is going to be a continuation, which is more volume on lower prices. So GMV is under pressure. Transaction volume is not. So think about your price points and ensure that your expectations for top line revenue are somewhat de minimis.
On that note, let's hit the music, get our dance on. Happy Friday, and thank you so much to everybody for indulging us and watching. We appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you. See ya. Have a good weekend. Here we go.